I've really been able to watch how this exercise can be incredibly helpful to both new and seasoned podcasters. It really helps to unclog that overfilled logical mind that gets stuck in its own creative staleness. And once you can get it out, it starts to get those juices flowing. Welcome to Podcast Coaching for Kingdom Entrepreneurs. I'm Kristin Fields Chadwick, your podcast coach on this transformative podcasting journey. Our mission: empower Kingdom entrepreneurs to confidently launch and grow podcasts, fostering a journey of being seen, being heard, being known, and making a lasting kingdom impact. This is Podcast Coaching for Kingdom Entrepreneurs. Your voice matters. Welcome back to Podcast Coaching for Kingdom Entrepreneurs. I am your podcast coach and host, Kristin Chadwick, and today is step 2 in our How to Start a Podcast series. So if you have missed step 1, I want you to go back and listen to last week's episode. This is a part of my proprietary process I coach my one-on-one launch clients through, as well as my group launch online program. And really, they're all built on top of one another. I want to start us off today by explaining the why behind these important steps, because I really believe when you are starting a podcast, you're putting something of you that you want to give to the world. And we want it to be done well. And as kingdom-minded men and women, we want to put out excellent content. You want to have clarity, you want to have intentionality and purpose. And that's why it's so important for you to start with your why and your who, like we discussed last episode. We want to be rooted inside of our identity and our mission and our purpose of our podcast. This is where good fruit comes. We are like Psalm 1:3. I was reading this morning in the Passion Translation. He will be standing firm like a flourishing tree planted by God's design, deeply rooted by the brooks of bliss, bearing fruit in every season of life. This applies to podcasting, to parenting, business, all things in our life. And we are encouraged by Holy Spirit to focus on the foundation of it all. This is where clarity, peace, fruitfulness, it's going to flow out of that. And we also need to remember one of my favorite Proverbs, which is Proverbs 29:18 in the English Standard Version. It says, "Where there is no prophetic vision, the people cast off restraint, but blessed is he who keeps the law." We get to partner up with the one who created us in our mother's womb and create together. How cool is that? So before we start into the meat of our episode and step 2, I want to do a quick 3-minute connection with Jesus. I think that this is such a valuable asset that we have as believers, is to connect with him. And we get to use our minds and our hearts to anchor ourselves into Jesus. So if you're walking or you're washing dishes, or maybe you're driving around town, you're carpooling, or you're at the pool listening to this during the summer, I want you to just pause, not pause the episode yet, but just pause and have a moment to breathe for a second. We're going to breathe. So close your eyes. I'm closing mine. And I'm going to breathe in and out and just connect back to life. He is life in us. And I mentioned Psalm 1:3. So picture standing next to that beautiful river it talks about. I'm going to read it again. He will be standing firm like a flourishing tree, planted by God's design, deeply rooted by the brooks of bliss, bearing fruit in every season of life. He is never dry, never fainting, ever blessed, ever prosperous. Now, again, picture in your mind, the movie of your mind that's playing in front of your eyes. Picture standing next to that river. You can hear the waters rushing through in front of you. The water, those like living waters are rushing and coming down from the throne room. You can smell the warmth and the purity of the air. You can feel this anchoring into this good soil. Remember, in the verse it says, we are deeply rooted by the brooks of bliss. Imagine your feet, your precious dogs, as my teenagers say, your dogs. They are rooted into beautiful grounds next to a river. Your feet symbolize this carrying of the good news. And we are anchoring in, like this verse says, anchoring into pure joy today. And I want you to feel that. Breathe in and out. Feel that anchoring into His living waters. Feel through your fingertips, through your body, God's love, His warmth over you, and let His love fill your mind and your body and your spirit. And as you do that, as you feel anchored in, there's a moment where our bodies respond and our shoulders go up and back. And as we think about the brooks of bliss, we are invited into imagining the Father's pure delight over you. He has created you and He delights in you. So again, breathing in and breathing out. Just sit and be in this place of worship. I call this a secret place where we can go into our imagination with Jesus and really anchor ourselves into the word. Actually, the root of meditate in the Hebrew is to imagine, ponder. So I want you to just imagine this place, the secret place of knowing God and knowing that He created you to be creative. We are created in His image, and He has designed you very specifically for this moment. And as we continue on in this verse, it says that we are bearing fruit in every season of life. And we thank the Father, our Creator, that the promise that flows here in this positioning by the river of life, this positioning is fruit. That's the end. So imagine this fruit. Imagine as you are anchoring in, you are grounding yourself in this truth as a podcaster, as a daughter of the King, rooted in His identity for you. This is where fruit comes from. So, Jesus, we ask for this river of life, this river of creativity that is straight from your throne room to guide us. We ask that you would guide us as a podcaster, as a future podcaster. I ask for revelation. I ask for wisdom. I ask for knowledge. I ask for understanding. I ask for keys to unlocking just solutions and testimony and story of your goodness for our ideal listener. We ask for prophetic vision and the gift of creativity. And we thank you that you are like living waters, refreshing and full of life. Bless each person listening today. Thank you for the written word and the spoken word. And I pray that you would bless the words that's going to pour out from every single podcaster's mouth. Let it be filled with your light. And thank you that you are in this creative process with us. Give us courage, give us boldness, give us a deep love for our listener. Use our voices to build your kingdom. In Jesus' amazing name, amen. Okay, now that we are anchored into the truth of that verse, let's start talking about the step 2, which is the creative process, which is one of my favorite ways to get this like river of creativity flowing. And it's called the brain dump. It's really, like an amazing title for it, the brain dump. And I want to share with you my story as a new creator of my podcast many years ago, Holistic Hearts. I entered into that season knowing I wanted to start a podcast, knowing that my why was I wanted to share this key phrase that I cannot claim as my own, but I for sure am stealing it. Shout out to Eugene Lunning of we can know a lot about God, but do we know him? That was the very basis of what I wanted to create this podcast on. But in that, I had so many ideas going on in my head that was really overwhelming. I mean, I felt constipated with ideas. I had ideas of wellness because I loved fitness and I loved encouraging people to take care of their bodies, and I loved talking about motherhood and parenting and faith and encounters and meditation and all of these things. And I had really just come out of this season of receiving wisdom, of understanding, of walking through some really hard things, ready to give out, but I didn't quite know how I could get it out of my head. As somebody who is introspective, and you've heard me talk about possibly on this podcast, I'm closer to an introvert than an extrovert. And so it was really hard for me to get to a place where I was comfortable sharing all of these things that I had learned over the last few years or more. And so I just remember having a moment with God and saying, like, I feel like my brain is constipated and it just needs to be uncorked. And that was such a like picture in my brain. It was like, y'all, I'm sorry for this disturbing image, but really the Lord uses the imagination for me so much. But it literally was like pulling a tampon out of my brain. I'm sorry, that's really vulgar, but that's where I'm going to go. It was an uncorking. And then he gave me this very simple but effective strategy that I have used with dozens and dozens of new podcasters to start this creative process. And it is the brain dump. So, most likely, you are much like I was, and you have a swirl or a plethora of content topics or ideas, and you may not even be sure what the name of your podcast is going to be yet. And that is okay. I just want to tell you that this is all a part of this process. And that's why we go through this process when I'm working with one on one clients, or if you're walking through my online boot camp. So, we're going to start with uncorking your creative thoughts and ideas today. So, what is a brain dump? This is the process of getting everything out of your head and clearing up space, clearing this overfilled, crowded, congested chaos that's going on in your mind right now. We need to clear the overflow so that we can decide the how we're going to implement this. So remember, we've talked about why, we've talked about who, and this is starting the how process. But today, I want to tell you, this is not the day that you're going to organize your content plan. This is a creative process day, and you got to be comfortable with kind of feeling like, well, now what? Or resisting the urge to organize. So just bear with me in this step-by-step process. So in these next couple of days, in between this step and our next step next week, I want you to do this exercise, or even just now, I want you to do this exercise, but you're going to have a couple of times that I want you to do this exercise, and it's going to build on our step 3 next week. So, today, or whenever you decide to do this in the next couple of days, we're going to set a timer for 10 minutes, and you're going to write down as many ideas of content, of topics as you can. Like we talked about last week, we already know our who and why. This is going to take all of those ideas from your why and your who and put it on paper. And you're going to want to pause this episode, like I said, and do this exercise after I explain a little bit more. So again, we're going to set a timer for 10 minutes. You're going to grab a journal. I prefer paper first because physically writing something down is actually a beautiful part of the creative process. There's like a completeness to getting your thoughts out onto paper versus having a computer and just writing it all out on your computer. I know there's like studies done by that, but I don't have them quoted right now. So just take my word for it. Okay. So get a journal out, get a piece of paper, get some of your kids' notebook paper that they didn't use this year in school, and just start writing down all of the ideas that come up for you. You're just going to go for it. There's, again, no judgment. I don't want you to organize this. I want this to be a judge-free zone. I want you to feel the rush of those creative living waters that we anchored ourselves into today, and you're going to let it just burst through. It may feel like the first 5 minutes, you're like, woo, I got so many ideas. I'm just going to put it on paper. And then you hit a wall. And that's okay. I just want you to be still and ask again, Holy Spirit, to bring to mind those things that you have already thought about that maybe you forgot about. And again, write it down over and over again. If you are feeling stuck, this is where, if you need to just pause and go walk around for a second, or maybe go do some exercising. Exercising actually helps build your creativity. So just keep that in mind. Some questions that you could ask if you get stuck, because I know like when I do this with a group, sometimes it'll be like about 5 minutes where they get everything down and then they're like, what else? But you guys, this is your sweet spot. Once we have gotten all of those ideas that are initially there, and then you have a blank of like, I don't know what else. This is where the goodness comes. This is where, like the analogy of, especially during the summer when your kids are like, well, I'm bored. That's actually a really good thing because that's when our most creative ideas come. So it's okay to have a blank. Just sit there for the 10 minutes, let those thoughts come. Some questions that you could ask if you get stuck in the middle of it is, what are the pain points of my ideal listener? What are the solutions that I'm bringing to the table? And maybe those will help you kind of get rolling again in your thought process. So 10 minutes, set that timer, pause, go do that exercise, and then come back. Okay, so after you have finished your timer, get up from where you were sitting or standing at the counter or wherever, and I want you to go take a break. Go grab a snack, go for a walk outside, put on a fun song, dance, but don't leave this exercise. Like you're already in the creative space, make sure that you set that time aside to come back. So you're going to take your break, and then I want you to come back and I want you to set another 5-minute timer. And you're going to do the brain dump again, but this time only for 5 minutes. And you're going to have more ideas come to the surface after you take a break and you're coming back. So pause, go do those 5 minutes, and we'll come back. Okay. So hopefully you paused and you did it again, or you can just listen through this whole exercise and do this at a different point. But this creative exercise is really such a valuable tool when I'm with my one-on-one clients that are launching a podcast or they're inside of the online boot camp. I've really been able to watch how this exercise can be incredibly helpful to both new and seasoned podcasters. It really helps to unclog that overfilled logical mind that gets stuck in its own creative staleness. And once you can get it out, it starts to get those juices flowing. So you can do this once a quarter as it comes, as you are starting to think about content ideas. You can do this once a year. It's just really helpful to do this over and over again because we learn and we grow as time goes on as podcasters, as experts in our field, as leaders. This is a really valuable tool. So I just want to give you a couple of examples of some people who have done this. So podcasters that have done this, they have realized with the brain dump exercise, I had one gal realize that there were so many interesting through lines through all of her ideas. So that right there is really helpful to come back to your brain dump and look over after you've already done your brain dumping. And you're going to recognize some of these patterns that you continue to talk about, or there's phrases that you say over and over again, or there are themes throughout that you're starting to recognize. And you say, hey, you know what? When we move to step 3 and 4, as we're talking about content ideas and planning, that you can start to put those into a series, or there's just so much that you can learn about having it down on paper. Another example, I frequently have new podcasters say, "How do I know I'm going to have enough content to talk about?" And being somebody who wrestles with that of like, gosh, I don't know if I have a lot to say on that. When you start to brain dump and have that creative flow, like I was talking about during that exercise, you realize that you really do have a lot to offer. And you recognize that you do have more to talk about than maybe you thought you did. And this is part of that mindset work that we do together, where really understanding that you have a voice that needs to be heard. There are experiences that you have walked through. There are life lessons that you have learned. There are entrepreneurial, wisdom that you want to give out. And those are all part of this process and getting it down on paper and seeing how much you can share. You are valuable. You are worthy of being seen, heard, and known. Okay, so for the rounding out of today, here's what I want you to do. I want you to book some time this week to do this brain dump exercise before you listen to step 3. Just take 30 minutes to do this. That's it. That's all you need between now and next week as we go into step 3. And if you are like, Kristin, okay, I love what you're doing. Guys, I know I can help you. I have helped so many, dozens and dozens. I can't even remember the last number that I counted of how many people we've helped launch a podcast successfully. And you guys, I can help you with this process, whether it is one-on-one launching your podcast. We help with that. We really take 4 hours. I would say it's probably more like 5 hours to walk through all of these exercises with you. It is focused one-on-one time. Or walk through our podcast boot camp from idea to launch. Everything that you need to know is online, ready for you to watch, to listen, to walk through these exercises that I just gave you. And you will have a podcast ready to launch in the fall. And like I said last week, fall is one of the best times to launch a podcast, as well as January, February, and March. So keep that in mind. And I look forward to seeing you guys again. Please book a call with me. Let's see what would be the best choice for you as you are thinking about launching your podcast. All right, take care. See you next week. Thanks for listening today. Hey, I want you to know that there is an opportunity for you and I to connect. I would love to do that. Find a link below and we can schedule a one-on-one free 15-minute consultation. I want to hear, where are you in your podcasting journey and how can I help serve you and help you bring that kingdom impact dream into reality?